In this wonderful 21st century, with its convenient elasticy magic, our socks stay up pretty much on their own. Historically, they have not. During the Italian Renaissance and pretty much all of history, socks or stockings or hose have been made using woven cloth cut on the bias. While it is surprisingly comfortable, bias or diagonally cut fabric lacks one key feature: retention. Thus, even a small amount of movement, like, say, walking, will turn an otherwise perfectly fit pair of stockings into a puddle of fabric around the ankle in a matter of moments. The historical remedy for this has been to use a garter, or a thin strip of fabric, tied around the top of the stocking to secure the stocking to the leg. Tying a sock to one's leg may sound silly, especially when put that way. However, it is pretty effective. I was beyond excited to discover an extant pair of garters from the Italian Renaissance in the collection of the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. They're from the latter half of the 16th century, about 100 years after the rest of the ensemble I'm currently working on, but how much could a strip of fabric that ties a sock to a leg really change? I was also in full-blown textile nerd paradise to realize these garters are made using Sprang. Sprang is an ancient technique used in many time periods. There are examples from ancient Egypt, from 19th century Europe, and yes, from the Italian Renaissance. Sprang does usually require a loom. I think I have a workaround, and if you've seen my finger looping video, it's going to look pretty familiar. The extant garters use silk thread, so that's what I'll be using. Actually, 3 colors. Oh, and the extant garters have metal wrapped thread too. I'll also need some sticks. Double-sided needles should do nicely, and some T-pins and scissors. I'll be using 6 loops of the silk thread, 2 of each color, and this does not include the metal thread. That will be added at the end to keep the metal from wearing off while weaving. Each loop should be twice the length of your garter, plus about 6 inches extra. I decided I needed about 10 inches to wrap and tie around my leg comfortably, so my loops are 26 inches. Ugh, you'd think working with string as much as I do, I'd have a better system in place to keep it untangled. You know what? There. I tied a knot at each end, leaving about 2.5 inches of yarn at the end. I then pinned each end to my ironing board, just like my finger looping video. I organized my threads with one of the sticks so that I had 1 row of colors on top and 1 row on the bottom. At this stage, it's hard to keep them super organized, but I more or less had them in the order I wanted for my pattern: darkest on the outside and lightest on the inside. And do the same for the bottom. Here's where the fun starts. For the first row, and there are only 2 rows in this pattern, I promised it would be easy. Working right to left, you pick up 1 thread from the bottom, then you drop 1 thread from the top into its place. Make sure you're working these in the correct order for your pattern. Pick 1 up from the bottom, drop 1 from the top. Pick 1 up from the bottom, drop 1 from the top, all the way across. You should be left with the same number, color, and pattern of threads you began with, except that they're the threads that were on the bottom, and the threads that were in your hand before are now on the bottom. Does that make sense? Next row, begin by picking up 2 threads from the bottom. Now drop 1, pick 1 up, drop 1, pick 1 up, working in the pattern until you get to the end. You should be left with 2 threads from the top, and you should drop them both to the bottom. This offset is what actually creates the weave. And that's it. That's the whole pattern. You just continue to do those 2 rows one after another, forever and ever and ever. So I haven't mentioned what's happening at the bottom of the, can we call this a loom? The work? Sprang is an anglicized version of a Swedish word, and it means 2 for 1. So for every row that you weave on top of the work, that row is mirrored at the bottom of the work. So when you're weaving 1 garter, you're actually weaving both garters. Is that awesome? I think that's pretty awesome. This means that even though Sprang does take forever and ever and ever, as a lot of my techniques end up doing, you're getting twice the bang for your buck. So I call that a win. So you can keep going, and there is a way to actually secure the middle of this. The extant garters that I'm sort of basing this off of, they are knotted at the end and then they have tassels. So I am going to be doing the same here. I will be knotting this off right here and then creating tassels with the end of it.